Hi everyone, this is Heather Lottanen from the Flourish.Academy. This is episode 437, and I have heard horror stories about professional photographers shooting entire client sessions without a memory card in their camera. Did you know that this was even possible? Well, last week my friend Debbie posted in the community group that she had shot some photos, I believe, of her family, and they weren't on her card because there was no card in the camera. And she was especially confused because when she took the photos, she looked at the back of her camera and she saw the images. But because there was no card, there are no images. Now, the reason that she saw those photos on the back of her camera is because all of our cameras have internal buffers. And what happens when you take an image is that photo goes into the internal buffer and then is transferred to the memory card. And that takes time in terms of milliseconds, but that transfer happens pretty quickly. Well, if there's no card in the camera, then obviously that transfer can't happen and the photo is gone. It just disappears. It's emptied from the buffer of the camera and has nowhere to go, so there is no photo. But she saw it on the back of her camera, so she was like, oh, the photos are there and they're fine. So what I want you to do, all of you, every single one of you, you need to check all of your cameras and make sure that that function is turned off. Now, I don't know why by default it's turned on, except that when we're in the camera store and we're demoing cameras, we don't always have cards inside of the cameras for demo purposes. But I really wish the default was the opposite. That is, that it was turned off by default and you had to turn it on in order to do that. So I'm going to show you how to do that with my Fuji X-T3 and my Nikon D750. The functionality on the Canon is going to be very similar. It is absolutely the very first custom function that I turn off on every single camera that I purchase. The ability to shoot without card. So on the Fuji X-T3, which by the way I have loved shooting with, you go to the menu, the setup menu specifically, and on Fuji, the setup menu is with the little wrench. You go to the setup menu, and then you go to, dang, which one is it? Button dial setting, and under button dial setting, there are 3 pages of options. I believe it's on page 2. Yes, page 2. Can you see this? It says, or you're seeing my ring light, sorry. It says shoot without card and it says off. So if you just press the arrow to go to that, you can have that turned on or off. So by default, again, that's turned on, which means I could shoot and shoot and shoot and shoot with no card in this camera and maybe not even recognize that that was happening. So I turned that off immediately when I picked up this X-T3 recently. On the D750, it's a little bit harder to find, but what you need to do is press menu and then go into the custom menu bank, and it is under F, which is designated by purple. I don't know why. It's F controls. You go into the controls and let me say okay to that. Okay, controls. Okay. That was like weirdly locked up for a second. Okay. So I pressed the right arrow to get into controls, and this is purple function 7, and it says slot empty release lock. And that needs to be set to lock. But again, by default, if I press that, okay, what is happening with my multi-select dial? It's acting very strange. Controls. By default, that is set to OK or enable, and you want to make sure that that is set to lock, release, locked. Now, why in the name of Mike? Nikon chose to label that slot, empty, release, lock is beyond me, because it makes much more sense to me on the Fuji where it says shoot without card off. That makes sense. And on the Canon, I believe it makes sense as well. And maybe someone that has a Canon can post the directions to get to that custom function. But you need to make sure that whatever camera you're using, all of your cameras, that you disable the function that allows the camera to shoot without a memory card, because it would be pretty embarrassing to shoot. In the case that I heard about, it was a senior session. This is a professional photographer, shot an entire senior session without a card in the camera, and could have very well been checking the back of the camera and seeing the image temporarily, again because of the buffer, and then just shooting away and not realizing that there was no card in the camera. If you think, oh my goodness, that could never happen to me, think again. It could happen to any one of us. So just make sure that it doesn't by turning that off. Could you please leave me a comment and let me know that you have completed this task? It is very important. And did you know about this? Leave a comment, let everybody know, because I don't think this is commonly known amongst a lot of photographers, or it would not keep happening. Check that custom function, shoot safely on your cards. I'll see you in the next video.